All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be the newest entry into the series, Do Woke Blacks Just Want a Hug from Their White Daddies? And I'm not quite sure what volume we're up to right now, but this is going to be an infinite series. There's no doubt about that, because these niggas are desperate for validation. I've had so many brothers hit me up asking me about what my thoughts were on the Botham Jean trial as well as the verdict. And as we saw, as the trial transpired, so much was revealed about the true motivations and how mentally fractured and psychologically disturbed a lot of our people are, to the degree that this trial was a ritual that played on the understanding that our people have a yearning to come together with the so-called white man. Why is that? Because they've embraced a couple of drugs. One of the drugs that our people have embraced is the corporate designation for their race, that being black. When you call yourself a so-called black person, what you're saying is that you cannot exist without the presence of the so-called white man or white woman, because you cannot have black without white. You simply cannot. The second drug that our people have embraced and have indulged in, imbibed on, whatever you want to call it, and not to digress, but that's another reason why one of the metaphors for doctrines, especially the doctrines of the Babylonian Kemetic Mystery School system, are the wine of the cup of the whore of Babylon. You drink of that wine, meaning you drink of the doctrines. But just to get back to the point, the second drug that our people have accepted are these fake religions. Christianity, Islam, Judaism. None of those religions are real. And of course, I'm going to have people who become very upset by me saying that. And there are also going to be brothers who say, what are you talking about? Don't you speak from the standpoint, the vantage point, or the perspective of someone who believes in the Bible? Yes, I do. And as someone who has read the Bible, I know that the Bible has nothing to do with any of these mainstream religions. If you're a member of a quote-unquote religion that has over 1 billion members, you should already know that that religion must be incorrect. It must be of man and not of God, because nothing that is of God is ever going to be as popular as these mainstream religions. What therefore is mind control, and more importantly, soul control. And as we can see here with this cat Brandt Jean, the brother of Botham Jean, he is under deep mind control, to the point where he's a zombie on the witness stand, who's more infatuated with making sure that he can connect with Amber Geiger, the person who is allegedly on trial for the murder of his brother, than he is with trying to seek justice. Brothers, there's a very thin line between being a seeker of justice and being vindictive. I understand that. And many people might say, well, what's wrong with him forgiving the person who infracted such a harm upon him and his family? That's the way that you move on. Yes, I do believe in forgiveness, but the number one form of forgiveness is self-forgiveness. And our people, talking about so-called black people, especially the so-called black man, has not forgiven himself. We have a far harder time forgiving ourselves than we do any other race of people. It's amazing to me how the so-called black man can walk up and down the block in his own community and basically see every business owned by a non-black person and have no issue with that, when you know damn well that you cannot go into the neighborhoods of these other races and open up a business yourself. You're so magnanimous that it is destructive to you. This person, Brandt Jean, and it's not just coming from him, even though he's getting the majority of the blame. This is a part of how he was raised. This person, Brandt Jean, is spiritually and mentally ill, but he'll get a pat on the back by many demographics that act as if they're a friend to the so-called black man, but they're really his enemies. Cats today think that the so-called white man is his enemy, or the so-called white race is his enemy. The number one enemy that the so-called black man has is himself. Once we conquer ourselves, all of our other enemies are going to be exposed automatically. Automatically. Once we conquer ourselves. This person, Brandt Jean, has not conquered himself. He sees the so-called white woman as a paragon of virtue. And he's actually hoping that he can establish a sexual relationship with her with the pretext that he has to be the magnanimous figure. He's the one who's coming down from on high to justify her and re-ingratiate her with the public. All of those things are swinging around in his mind. Because no disrespect to the brother, but he looks like he's never seen a vagina a day in his life. He hasn't seen a vagina or felt one since he slid out of his mother's vagina however many years ago. He's very desperate, and this entire performance that he put on the witness stand was pathetic, but it was something that I expected, because I understand a lot of the issues that pervade the quote-unquote black community. And of course, it wasn't just him. It was also the quote-unquote judge, Tammy Kemp, who's a Luciferian herself. She's a member of a sorority. I believe the name of the sorority is Delta Sigma Theta. We'll be covering that a bit later. But please understand that all frats and sororities are nothing but offshoots of the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system. That's all they are. That's why one of their terms is that we're a Greek organization. What the ancient Greeks did was take what the Babylonians and the people of Kemet did and just put Greek names on it. And please understand the ancient Greeks were so-called black people. They did not become majority, quote-unquote, Caucasian until the invasion of Alexander and the Macedonians. But just to get back to the point, we're going to go over certain important aspects of what transpired with the Botham Jean trial. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
I can speak for myself. I forgive you.
Well, Brandt, you're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for a very large percentage of so-called black people in the Americas. And as usual with the wokety wokes and the pro-blackities, they tried to act as if they were so incensed by what Brandt Jean was saying. But the vast majority of them, they want that same hug that he was able to receive from that Caucasian woman. And by the way, she has decided that she's going to appeal the verdict. So how sincere was she in her assertion or her claim that she was willing to be held accountable for her actions? She does not care that she killed that man at all. But what was on the foremost of Mr. Brandt Jean's mind once again is trying to establish or lay the groundwork for a relationship with Amber Geiger that was based on her guilt, hoping that he would be able to receive some type of sexual recompense from her. There's no doubt about that in my mind. All this dude is thinking about is trying to get his first piece of ass. That's it.
And I know if you go to God and ask him, he will forgive you.
That's part of his Christian church programming. When you read the scriptures, the Bible is very nuanced. I'm not going to digress too much into the scriptures, but for those of us who've ever read the Bible with a spirit of understanding, everything has to be read and understood in context. So many things that people read in the scriptures, they try to apply to themselves, when in all actuality, when you read what was stated in context, Christ was speaking to a certain group of people. Paul was speaking to a certain population or a certain group of people. Peter, so on and so forth, all the prophets. So yes, you can read the Bible no matter who you are for a certain amount of edification. But the Bible is only written towards a particular person. It's almost like if I'm having a birthday party and there are 35 people that I want to invite to my birthday party, but I lose the invitations and a random person picks up one of the envelopes and opens it and it says, you're invited to Chronicles of Judah's birthday party on such and such date. Here's the address. And they show up to the location. I'm not going to let them in because I don't know them. It's the same thing with the scriptures. The scriptures are addressed and directed to a particular group. Everyone is reading that invitation and trying to act as if it's about them. But just getting back to what Mr. Brandt Jean is about, he was put under mind control from his childhood by his parents when they took him to that church system that taught him that you're supposed to forgive everyone for everything. And there are levels of forgiveness. If he wants to forgive Amber Geiger for what she did, there's no doubt that he has the right to do that. That's his personal preference or whatever you want to call it. But you cannot allow your personal feelings or your lust for her to get in the way of judgment. Always understand something, even though I'm not a believer or an adherent to the concept of optics in every situation, we do have to grasp that sometimes how things look equate to how things are. If you're in a relationship with your lady and maybe she has a male friend or she just is walking down the street with a male coworker who she knows likes her, she has to grasp that she's giving that person signals, even though she claims she respects her man. So down the line, when she starts getting hit on by that coworker or by that so-called male friend, she'd be a fool to act like she was confounded. Once again, how things look sometimes can equate to how things are. So when he stands on the witness stand and seems to be more concerned with Amber Geiger than his own brother getting the justice that he deserves, he's making himself out to be someone who is not proud of his family, not even going into the racial aspect. You don't even respect your own brother. You're not more concerned with your brother's receiving his justice and his fair equity according to the laws of the land, according to the judicial system, than you are trying to build up some fake bridge that's not going to last. Amber Geiger doesn't like you. She doesn't even like so-called black people very much. That's according to some of the ancillary evidence that was found.
And I don't think anyone could say it. Again, I'm speaking for myself, not even bad for my family. But I love you just like anyone else.
He said, I love you just like anyone else, and then licked his lips. All of his subliminal intonations and gestures and facial expressions are showing what his actual goal was. He's trying to build a bond with this female so that later on he could start writing her letters, visiting her, and then after she's let out of prison, using that as the platform to establish a relationship with her. He's extremely socially awkward and awkward when it comes to females. There's no doubt about that. That's the energy that's coming off of him while he's on the witness stand.
And I'm not gonna say I hope you rot and die.
Of course you're not gonna say that, because if she rots and dies, how you gonna get your first piece of ass?
Just like my brother did, but
Listen to what this fool just said. I'm not going to say that I hope you rot and die like my brother did. But I'm going to say, so in other words, you value her more than your brother.
I personally want the best for you. And I wasn't gonna ever say this in front of...
Damn, he getting so horny he got to loosen up his collar. He said he wants the best for her. Well, the best thing for her is to serve her time in prison.
My family or anyone, but I don't even want you to go to jail.
I don't even want you to go to jail. I want you to come to me in my parents' house. I have a big room in the attic. We could watch TV and play video games. And you could help me with something that I need help with. I have a friend named Brandt Jr. He's always been asleep. I want him to wake up and stand straight up for the first time. Can you help me with that?
I want the best for you.
You want the best piece of ass she can offer you.
Because I know that's exactly what both of them would want you to do.
You don't know what both of them will want her to do because both of them is gone. He's in the spirit world. But you know what? I'm going to take his word for it because they were both raised in the same household. So they're most likely under the same programming or put under that same religious programming of quote unquote love everyone or allegedly love everyone. Am I against the concept of forgiveness? Absolutely not. But there's a time and a place for everything, and everything has to be done decently and in order. You don't get on the witness stand and say, I hope that you don't even go to jail. After the verdict is rendered, then you can speak to the media and say, I have no personal ill will towards Amber Geiger. I believe that what she did was by accident, and I hope that she comes out of her experience in prison as a better person who's learned from what she did.
And the best would be give your life to Christ.
Please give your life to Christ. I would like to be the first person to lay hands on you and shower you with my anointing oil.
I'm not going to say anything else. I think
other than, will you marry me?
Giving your life to Christ would be the best thing that both of them would want you to do. Again, I love you as a person.
How you gonna love her as a person when you don't know her as a person? You can say you love the opportunity that this court case has given you to connect with the female, because once again, it's very clear this cat is as virgin comes. He got olive oil seeping out of his forehead.
And I don't wish anything bad on you.
At least not until I bust my first nut.
I don't know if this is possible, but can I give her a hug, please?
And after I give her a hug, is it okay if my zipper's down? Because it is right now. So after I give her a hug, is it possible that we can submit our relationship in the courtroom, Your Honor?
Please?
Please. This is my one chance to hug a white woman. Oh my God, please. I'm so excited.
Yes.
There goes that liberal black woman for you, so-called black man. I hope that you're listening, man. I hope that you brothers are starting to see what's really going on in this society. They try to push the black versus white thing because they don't want the so-called black man to understand that there are different levels to this captivity. And the main way that you keep any creature in captivity is to make them believe that their captivity is somewhere that they should feel comfortable. If you've ever seen a lion in the zoo, what they do is they make the enclosure as large as possible so that the lion is comfortable. He's still in captivity. He cannot roam the plains, but at least he's getting fed every day. He knows where he's at, and his life is not in danger, or at least not in relative danger. That's how the so-called black man is in this society right now. They have you feeling quote unquote comfortable. They tell you, you know what, so-called black man, you can do what you want. You can have sex with whoever you want. There are no repercussions for the most part for the things that you do other than drug trafficking and things of that nature or violent crimes. We're going to try to entice you into those things because we need you to be a part of our prison industrial complex. But where in the world can you go that's better than this? That's how they convince you. And then they sedate you even more with TV shows and these fake religions, so on and so forth, so that the so-called black man does not even know up from down. And then on top of that, they program your woman to embrace whoredom. They program the so-called black woman to embrace being a whore. In your mind, because so many brothers' minds are not cultivated, you see a woman walking down the street with a fat ass and you think that's a good thing that she's showing it off, when it's really not. It stops us from being productive. It stops us from being orderly. It stops us from being respectful to one another. It stops us from understanding that the woman is the property of her husband. Yes, she is. I'm sure a lot of people are going to get upset by that. It's okay. But she is. The woman is the property of her husband. Due to the fact that we do not embrace that sentiment anymore, now there's so much interchangeability between couples that it has destabilized the family. And yes, a man can have more than one woman. Why do you think in these other communities, even in America, in the so-called black community, you might have a substrata of Arabs or East Indians, and they're always in order? Because the man knows that the woman is a part of a culture that is strong, and if she tries to turn on him, she's going to be shamed. There's no shame for the females in this society. Like the scriptures tell us, she has a whore's forehead. She refused to be ashamed. Meaning what? She's always with her head up high, proud, no matter what she does. Brandt comes from a household like that, dominated by feminine energy and female energy. Look how he walked. That man walked like he's never had an erection in his life. He's never had an erection. He's never busted nut. Look like he's never took a shit in his life. Look at him. Oh, Amber, I feel so sorry for you. And no, it's not a Snicker bar in my pocket. I'm just happy to see you. Look at the police officer. The police officer is having a Charlton Heston moment. Get your goddamn hands off of her, you damn dirty ape. That's the longest hug ever. Hey, Amber, you feel that? I think you're pregnant with twins. Because I just felt an urge and a surge I've never felt before. Step back slowly. This nigga getting 4 or 5 hugs out of this. He's living every woke liberal Negro's dream. He's finally getting a hug. That's why Tammy Kemp had to jump in. Tammy Kemp was like, what about for me? I want a hug too. Look at this dude getting 4 or 5 hugs out of this shit. He's not paying any mind to what she's saying. She's like, I'm so sorry for what I've done to both of them. And if I've harmed you or your family, I just want to let you know I'm truly apologetic. He's like, huh? Who the fuck both of them? Okay, so now, brothers, we're going to jump ahead. We've already covered the simp blackmail aspect with Mr. Brandt Jean. We saw how he embarrassed himself and was clearly desperate to establish a sexual relationship with Miss Amber Geiger. He's been seriously hampered, both mentally and spiritually, through the religion program that he was placed under from a child. Now we're going to move forward to Miss Tammy Kemp, who represents a far more insidious aspect and factor in this entire narrative. And I think that there are reverberations, not just in the court case, but also in the overall so-called black community, because she represented the quote-unquote black matriarch in this whole endeavor. And people love to say that Lady Justice is blind. I think that Miss Tammy Kemp took that concept a bit too far. She took it literal, because she clearly is blind to exactly what transpired here and how her actions and her conduct are going to impact the entire so-called black community in America psychologically, as well as across the world, how the other races look at it. It's almost like if you're a new kid in school, if you allow yourself to be bullied, everybody else is going to look at you and say, okay, that's easy pickings right there. When so-called black people continue to allow themselves to be deferential to the other races look at you and they say, okay, that's easy pickings right there. We know that we can fuck with them. And when we get our way in the courtroom or in the court system, they're going to be more concerned with making sure that they can maintain their subservience to us just so that we have an interaction or connection than they are with seeking out complete justice. This woman is supposed to be a judge. Now, I'm already on record as stating a woman is not supposed to be a judge. They're too emotional. They're too hormonal. And beyond that, they get a menstrual cycle. Now, I'm not quite sure if Miss Tammy Kemp still gets her menstrual cycle, but she's not supposed to be a judge. That's an abomination. A woman's understanding of things that are going on around her are severely limited due to her hormones and the fact that, once again, she has a menstrual cycle for anywhere from 5 to 7 days out of the month. Many people might not like that. It is what it is. But this person, as I've already mentioned, is a lower level member or adherent to the Babylonian Kemetic Mystery School system. She is in a sorority. I believe that the name of her sorority is Delta Sigma Theta. And the matron goddess of her sorority is Minerva, the quote-unquote goddess of wisdom, represented by the owl. And it's very important that brothers grasp this, because many of the people who are in these frats and sororities, they don't know what they're a part of. Not until they get to the higher levels and the rituals become more and more blatant, to the level where they start to quote-unquote ride the goat, meaning ride Pan or Khnum, Benebdejet, the quote-unquote great creator god. Just the fact that they're pushing and they're promoting the adherence or the veneration of these false deities, these mother goddess archetypes, should tell these people what they're in or what they're about, but they don't care because they just want to be a part of the in crowd. What they don't grasp, though, is how much their adherence to those principles impacts them in their overall life, how they view things. They're more concerned with bringing so-called black people together with the other races than they are with making sure that our people are put in positions of prominence and power so that we can exert that power in uplifting the rest of our people. Once again, that is why the sororities and the fraternities are known as the boule, the advisor to the king. Who's the king? The king is who they're trying to make sure always stays in power, because his power trickles down to them. That's why they love to have these prominent positions in this system. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're doing it due to your hard work, your intelligence, etc. But if you're becoming a judge or some other, government figure because you're in a frat or a sorority, that means you're nothing but an agent of chaos. That's all you are. You're acting in the best interests of the quote-unquote king, the force that still has us in captivity, calling each other black, calling one another black, so on and so forth, having us adhere to these fake religions. And you see what she did after the verdict. The first thing that she did, and subconsciously she was trying to one-up Brandt Jean too. She went into her back chambers, came out with a Bible and all this other stuff, because Brandt Jean kind of opened the door to tell her, okay, it's okay for me to do what I really want to do, which is comfort Massa. Because that's all she was doing. But anyway, we're going to let her speak about this. Of course, I'm going to chime in.
Well, I'm sure for you all who were watching it online, you just generally saw the back of Miss Geiger, and from time to time a side glance. But at the start of trial on September 23rd, she was very stoic. She seemed to have found a point in space to fixate on, and she just seemed to stare straight ahead at that. And she sat very still. And
hey, brothers, you have to find you a good woman that loves you the way that woke blacks love white people.
After the verdict of guilt, she was visibly shaken. And
well, one would expect that you'll be visibly shaken after you are found guilty of a murder. One would expect that, even though I'm sure people are going to say she wasn't found guilty of murder. She was found guilty of manslaughter or whatever. She killed a man that she wasn't supposed to kill. So you can try to slice it and dice it however you want. At the end of the day, it's just very interesting to me how much they're trying to humanize this person. And we all know that when so-called black men are on trial for any type of crime anywhere near this level, the first thing that the media does is try to dehumanize them. Look at what they're doing to Myles Garrett, and all he did was bust a quarterback over the head with a helmet. They're trying to call him the worst thing in the world. There's only a few people in the media who are actually assessing what actually happened with that issue, but that's a whole other video. The point is that Tammy Kemp and Brandt clearly are under mind control. It is not necessarily a willful or a willing mind control. It's just what's been embedded within them from their youth. They look at the so-called white man and white woman as someone who they should be seeking a connection with. And if you have a connection with a so-called white person, white man, or white woman, just on general principles, that's your business. But in a court case, you're supposed to be professional. In a court case, it's your job to get on the witness stand and say what needs to be said in order for there to be objective justice.
I think it took her quite some time to regain her composure. But after that verdict, she was a different person. She was a broken person. I saw
a pathetic virgin. That's what you saw, because that's what I'm looking at. Oh boy, poor Brandt.
a remarkable young man who came to the stand.
Brothers, Brandt is the perfect product of the black matriarchy. That's what he represents. He represents the perfect product of the black matriarchy. Everything that he said was a reflection of their teachings. Please keep in mind that it is the black matriarchy that galvanizes the quote-unquote black church system in America, the Caribbean, Central America, South America, etc. But especially in the United States and in the Caribbean. It is the so-called black matriarchy and so-called black woman who put all the oomph behind the quote-unquote black church. They're the ones who dragged their sons to that. And the real issue is that the so-called black man does not read the Bible for himself. He understands it or misunderstands it through the disinformation and misinformation that he receives in the church system at the behest of his mother. So because he worships his mother, he believes everything that he was taught in the church is a direct reflection of what's taught in the Bible, even though he's never read the Bible. So when he realizes that the church is bullshit, he doesn't blame his mother or anybody else for dragging him there. He blames the Bible. So then he starts talking about how the Bible is the white man's book. All you have to do is read the Bible to understand that the so-called white man, that energy is not anywhere within the Bible. But you have to open it up and read it to get the proper understanding of what it says and things of that nature. And I promise you that as a so-called black man, if you start to read the Bible and your mother is someone who believes in the quote-unquote church system, there might be an issue there. Fortunately for me, neither one of my parents were into the church system, so that was never a problem for me. But if you're a so-called black man who was raised through the church system and you start to actually read the Bible with an objective eye, and with an eye of scrutiny, you're going to start to understand things that the Bible actually says as opposed to what you were taught in church, and that might lead to some issues with you and your mother, or you and your parents.
And I did not expect, I don't know what I thought he was going to say, but
you were just hoping that he did not say anything too offensive to the powers that be.
But I did not imagine that that was his forgiveness, his outreach to her.
That was not forgiveness. That was an attempt to offer himself to her as a quote-unquote pen pal and hopefully a sexual partner in the future. That's all that was. That was not forgiveness. Forgiveness is after the verdict, you look in the camera, and if you so choose to, you say, I hope that Amber Geiger can learn from this situation and come out of her prison sentence as a better person. That's forgiveness. Forgiveness is not sitting on the witness stand and saying, I hope that you don't even go to jail. That was an abomination.
His telling her that he only wanted the best for her.
Yes, the best piece of dick that he could offer. That's what he meant when he said he hoped the best for her. I hope that I can give you the best piece of dick that I can.
I did not expect that. There was a lot of crying. I have not had one where defense counsel and prosecutors are crying.
All those so-called black people, they were so traumatized when this woman got found guilty.
As well as the defendant's family and the victim's family. And yes, I was crying. It's not unusual for me to cry.
Of course, that's because you're not supposed to be a judge. You're too emotional.
Cry almost all the time. And I think it was cathartic for everybody, because
it was cathartic for you because it was very traumatic for you to have to see the apple of this society's eye, that being not just a Caucasian woman, but a blonde-haired Caucasian woman who was on trial for killing a so-called black man, especially a so-called black man who happened to be dark-skinned, and you had to put her away. I'm sure that hurt you to your heart. And she does not even understand this. I'm sure that she does not even grasp how deep the various levels of programming are within her that would make her feel so much compassion for someone who committed a crime like that with so much negligence as a police officer. You're so busy doing whatever you're allegedly doing that you barge into this man's apartment and shoot him, and you're totally unaware of your environment. At least that's the cover story.
The attorneys fought hard. It was a horrific circumstance. And I think Brandt...
You don't truly believe that it was an horrific circumstance, because if that's truly how you felt, you guys would have been pushing for a harder sentence and for harder charges.
Jean gave us an example
of what all woke black people are looking for, that being that hug. The religious programming, once again, it's major because it's stopping the so-called black man from thinking with a ruling class mentality. You're always thinking with a mentality of supplication due to that religious programming.
And
that's part of that black matriarchal suite, as I've already mentioned. It's like if you get a program for your computer and it has a lot of components to it, they call it a suite. Part of the programming for the black man is that black matriarchal suite. That's the church program. That's believe everything that you're taught in school, that program. You should want to get a job, not own anything or run a business. That's part of the program. Black love is part of the program as well, meaning there's no difference between a concubine and a wife material woman. All those things are components of what the so-called black male is taught as a child. And it comes out in moments like this, which of course, this is the main directive of the black matriarchy, which is when you see the so-called white man and woman, you should be trying to come together with them. Because as I've always stated, the liberal black female tries to act as if she's so concerned about race. They're really not. They know where their bread is buttered. They know that they need the so-called white man to stay in power because he's the one who's liberated them. Once again, the so-called white man and woman are the ones who have put the black woman in such a prominent position. So no matter what they say, they believe that this society as currently configured is correct. They just want to tinker with it a little bit. The black woman, the liberal black woman, let me specify, and 95 to 98% of all of them are liberal. The liberal black woman really just wants to hold the other hand of the Caucasian man. She'll let the white woman hold the right hand, but she wants to have the left hand.
The person is more than just the act, the horrific act that they've committed. That's the first time I had someone who was going into custody to serve a prison sentence ask me for a hug. I'm very cognizant of the sheriff's policies concerning contact with an accused.
Yes, it's called professionalism and objectivity. So you were cognizant of the sheriff's proclamation, or that law that stops you from having physical contact with the accused, but it didn't matter to you because it was that important that you make that statement within yourself, because you were so touched by what was going to happen to this Caucasian woman, because you yourself had to get that hug, and that was your best opportunity. Just like Brandt Jean knew, this is my best opportunity to get to hug an actual white woman. I have to take advantage of it right now because she owes me, and she's probably going to think that this might help her in her trial, and who knows, maybe down the line I can establish a sexual relationship with her. This female right here is the same way. She said to herself, you know what, if I can hug this woman, not only can I one-up Brandt Jean, but I'll also gain such notoriety and such acclaim with the people who matter, that being the people who are above her, the people who don't get seen on television, that is going to help her career down the line.
And I was thinking about that, but I was also thinking about this.
Here she go, handing her a Bible and making her lame ass old liberal black woman gestures. Remember, have the faith of a mustard seed. That's why she got her fingers like that. She tried to tell her about the mustard seed parable. Have the faith of a mustard seed.
Woman is really, really hurting, and Brandt Jean has given her a measure of hope, and for whatever reason she's asking me for the same compassion.
She was asking you for that quote-unquote same compassion because she saw the look in your eye. Like you already stated, you noticed what she was looking at over the course of the trial, that she was zoned in, and then you noticed how she looked when the verdict came down. She saw you looking at her. So she said, you know what, let me ask this old black broad for a hug too, since we at it.
And who am I to deny her?
Absolutely. Who are you to deny her of that hug? So remember, Tammy Kemp, when Raheem from the hood is on trial for the same crime, give him a hug too. But I'm sure that you won't. Okay, so now, brothers, we've examined the main two components of the Botham Jean sham trial thus far, or I should say the trial of Amber Geiger, which was basically a sham and a ritual to once again promote the veneration of the image of the righteous or the divine Caucasian female in this society. It is what it is. But we've examined those first two components, that being the simp black male and the black matriarchal / mother goddess aspect of it. Now we're going to come to the final aspect, which is even more important for you so-called black men out there to grasp, because these are aspects that I speak about a lot on this channel. That's why I liked what happened in this court case. Of course, I'm not talking about the death of the brother Botham Jean. I'm just talking about what occurred in the aftermath, because it allows us to see certain things play out that just confirm what I've been telling you, brothers, for a very long time. They're going to interview two jurors here who are on the Amber Geiger trial. Notice that of all the jurors that they could have chosen, the two demographics that they chose to use in this interview, that being the Caucasian male and the black female. And as many of you cats out there who pay attention should know by now, the Caucasian male and the black female, on average, of course there are exceptions to this rule, but on average they tend to have a lot of the same tactics in how they deal with the so-called black man. They tend to have the same outlook in how they deal with the so-called black man. Just pay attention to a lot of their rhetoric. Once again, it's a Caucasian male from the jury as well as a so-called black female from the jury. Let's see what they have to say.
That ABC News exclusive, the brother of the man who was killed when a Dallas police officer walked into the wrong apartment. We will hear from Brandt Jean.
Yeah, every time I see Brandt Jean walk, I have to crack up. Dude look like he's never busted nut in his life. And got a stick up his ass.
Live in just a few moments. But first, Marcus Moore joins us from Dallas. Marcus, good morning to you. You spoke with two of those jurors who convicted Amber Geiger of murdering her neighbor.
Yeah, Cecilia, these two jurors gave us a glimpse of what it was like inside that jury room as they made this difficult decision. And they told me there were sleepless nights and a lot of tears.
The reason there were sleepless nights and a lot of tears is because you didn't really want to have to lock up Amber Geiger at all. I wonder if there were any black males on the jury and why we're not speaking to them. Because the person who was killed was a so-called black male. Brothers, imagine if a white male had broken into a black woman's apartment, shot and killed her, and that trial became national news. After the fact, if he was treated as well as Amber Geiger was treated, which of course they wouldn't allow, because there are different energies that they're trying to push right now, and revenge for the woman is definitely one of them. But imagine if after the fact, had that white male police officer only been given a verdict of 3.5 years, that they decided to interview two members of the jury and they chose a black man and a white female. How do you think people would respond to that? Wouldn't they say, why are they talking to a black man for? It was a black woman who was killed by that white cop. I promise you, liberal black females will be saying that. The same liberal black females who had the film Nat Turner sabotage. Because once again, the liberal black female believes herself to be a demographic. They want to be their own demographic. They do not consider themselves quote unquote black. They consider the black female to be her own demographic. I cannot stress this enough. And they play the race or racialism card when it suits them, only to get attention, because they know that racial issues involving the so-called black man are certainly more pervasive in this society than racial issues regarding the so-called black woman. But pay very close attention. There's a reason why they linked up the black female with the white male, because those are the two demographics that are the least likely, at least the liberal black woman and the so-called Caucasian male. Those are the two demographics that are the least likely to actually care about any form of real justice for a so-called black man. So let's see what they have to say here.
I think that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
This morning, two of the...
So now the young liberal black female said this is one of the hardest things that she's ever had to do. A so-called black man was sitting in his living room, minding his own business, from what I understand, singing church hymns. His apartment gets broken into by a so-called Caucasian woman who allegedly is a police officer. She's so disoriented from sexting with her partner or whatever they claim she was doing. She shoots him, does not perform CPR on him, allows him to expire. Right? That's what occurred. But this liberal black female here says that this was so difficult for her to perform her duty or her task.
Jurors who found former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger guilty of murdering Botham Jean are speaking out.
There's no way we can ever know what he would want, but
you'll do what you normally do, which is put your thoughts into his head. And for all intents and purposes, once again, if Botham Jean is anything like his brother, who the hell knows? He might say, let her off scot-free, because a lot of these Negroes are bugged out. But when you're interviewing a so-called Caucasian man and a so-called liberal black female about the plight or the fate of a so-called black man who was sitting in his own apartment minding his own business, I don't need to hear what they have to say, because I already know where this is going. Notice even their clothes are color coordinated. You notice that? They're both wearing black pants and they're both wearing blue on the top to show that they're synchronized. Now, of course, this was coordinated before the show, but these are certain subliminal things that they're using to convey to the viewer that they're of one mind, and they're trying to communicate to you, so-called black man, the liberal black female and the Caucasian male are of one mind.
I think we all had to make a decision that we could live with and that our conscience could be sound with.
The diverse jury, made up of 8 women and 4 men, all of varying ethnicities, sentenced Amber Geiger to 10 years behind bars. These jurors telling us
8 women and 4 men, Was there a black man on the jury? I'd be interested to know that. And if there was, I would love to hear what he has to say about what happened in the jury room. I promise you that if there was a black man on this jury, it was only one. And if he was there in that jury room, they were constantly trying to tell him, that's if his mind was sharp, they were constantly trying to tell him, you know, I think that you're a bit too angry about this. She's clearly sorry for what she did.
The decision was not an easy one.
There was a lot of crying.
A lot of crying.
When we were told to go decide between 5 and life, that was like, we didn't have words.
Why? Why would that be an issue between 5 and life? She shot an innocent man. Those are facts. She's a police officer who, once she realized that she was in the wrong apartment, still did not perform CPR on the man. So we should be starting somewhere around the 20-year range, knowing that with probation she's probably going to get out in about 12. But that would be what she would deserve for what she did, and then the lack of wherewithal to try to remedy what she did.
Prosecutors were asking for 28 years.
They were.
You all landed at 10.
After hearing about how his family talked about him, he seemed like just the light in their lives, and he was kind and just caring and forgiving. And I
Right, so you said to yourself, Botham Jean is caring and forgiving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this woman who killed him out of prison as early as possible.
I told everyone, I was like, I'm really having a hard time with this because we all agree that it was a mistake, and
All you guys agreed that it was a mistake. Are you sure about that? Once again, was there a black man on this jury? And where is his interview? I need to hear what he has to say. I'm not concerned about what the liberal black woman or the so-called Caucasian man thinks about this issue, because I already know what they want to be true. I already know what they want to be true. They're not concerned about what actually happened. They're concerned about what they want to be true. I only include them in this video so that once again brothers can get an understanding of the energies that are directed towards you from your enemies. Okay? The liberal black female is not your friend. She is your enemy. Alright? And these other races, at the end of the day, an enemy can come in various shapes and forms. It's not necessarily just someone who's trying to kill you, but someone who's also not concerned with your welfare. They're not concerned with there being any form of equity when it comes to the dispensing of justice. How could you sit here and say that Botham Jean was a forgiving, generous, great individual, and that made you think to yourself that the person who killed him should get less time and not more time? That makes no sense whatsoever.
I don't think Bo would want to take harsh vengeance. I think he would want to forgive her. And I felt...
Right, but what do you think according to the law of the land? What do you think that she deserved for what she did according to the law of the land? Not what he thinks or what you think he would think. What do you think?
I didn't feel like I had any right to speak for him. And he...
Well, that's the problem. You're talking about how you felt. What do you know according to what the case informed you of? And hopefully you were paying attention to.
He wasn't there to talk for himself. But listening to how people talked about him, I felt like he would forgive.
Of course he wasn't there to talk for himself because she killed him. So what are you going to do about that?
Give her.
They asked for 28 years, and I'm going to be honest and true. I was like...
I would like 28 years? What? I had an ex-man who sold drugs, and he locked up for 35 years. And I was like, okay, well, the nigga was selling drugs and he black, so he probably deserved it. But Amber Geiger? No, hell no. 28 years. Maybe 28 days.
I can't give her 28 years. I know a lot of people are not.
I can't get no white woman look that good 28 years. I looked at her hair, I was like, damn, I wish my hair looked like that. That's why I got my weave on fleek right here.
I'm happy about the 10 years, but I felt like, you know, for this case was not like any other case. You can't compare this case to any of those other officers killing unarmed black men.
And you will let all of those officers, if they appeared in court and cried enough, and if they were female, you let them off too. Or you want to let them off as well. Of course, you would give them the minimum of the mandatory sentence that you would have to give them, but in your heart, you want to let them off as well. And I have news for you. There are a lot of different cases of murder. They don't have to just be officers killing unarmed black men. But for all intents and purposes, if we're going to speak literally, that's what she did. She killed an unarmed black man. Bottom line. And on top of that, she made no effort to perform CPR on him after she did what she did, because she, quote unquote, freaked out.
Those officers that killed unarmed black men, when they got out, they went back to living their lives. And
that's what she's going to do.
Amber Geiger, ever since she killed that man, she has not been the same. She showed remorse, and that she's going to have to deal with that for the rest of her life.
Okay.
Yes, and for the rest of your life, you're going to have to deal with the fact that you feel more sorry for her than you feel for Botham Jean. Once again, the case is about Botham Jean. It's not about Amber Geiger. Amber Geiger was there to get her sentence. We already know that she did what she did. She's not on trial to prove or disprove whether she committed the crime. We know for a fact she did it. So she was there to get her sentence.
Can I give her a hug, please? Please?
It was the
Man said if I don't get this hug, I'm going to explode in more ways than one.
this moment of grace and forgiveness to Geiger from Jean's brother Brandt that has the jurors convinced they made the right decision.
We found out this morning about what his brother did, and it kind of helped us feel like we ended up with the right decision.
It's one thing that Botham can teach us all is that we should all love each other.
Absolutely. Remember that when your baby daddy has missed his child support payments for 2 months in a row. Remember that shit then. Brothers, where is all this love and compassion and forgiveness when it comes to the so-called black man and his daily comings and goings? Where is this then? Good Lord, these people, they got so much love in their heart, don't they?
Instead of hate each other. And I honestly think that if Botham would have just got shot and not killed, I think he would have forgiven Amber Geiger.
And there was such a strong reaction to what Bo's brother did on the stand. In fact, Jean's sister, Alyssa, released a moving statement online saying, in part, what Brandt did, I truly admire. I pray every day to get to the point of forgiveness, and he is already there. Michael?
All right, thank you so much.
But anyway, that's basically it on that, brothers. It's so amazing to me how much this cat Brandt Jean is getting extolled for what he did. Now I wonder, once again, if the roles were switched and the components were different, if people would be extolling that same act. And that's truly the test of objectivity. Do you have the same assessment no matter who it is who's doing the act? And for the most part, the answer is always no. But anyway, that is the end of whatever volume this is of do woke blacks or liberal blacks, do they just want a hug? Of course, the answer is yes. The answer is always going to be yes, because our people are under a very deep